Nino. El Nino. El Nino.
In the summer of 1997, the press pulled a national fire alarm warning of an unusually harsh upcoming winter. Dire predictions swept forth, frightening public leaders and common citizens alike. Unprecedented amounts of rain, sleet, and snow were bound to fall, dropped by incredibly powerful storms which would march across the Pacific and slam headlong into California, my home. Having lived for several years in Northern California, I knew how hectic and heavy the rain could be on my friends up there. But Southern California is where I'd watch from this time around, from right here in Orange County. As a kid, this is where I'd spent past El Nino times, when the waves would break over Coast Highway, towns would flood, and houses got washed away. I even recall some seaweed up on top of the 76 ball in downtown Laguna Beach. I knew what El Nino could mean, and at least began thinking about fixing some of the bothersome leaks at my house. And like me, cities in Orange County, especially along the coast, had their own leaks to worry about. People began to take notice of this child, El Nino, to either prepare, laugh at, or both.
It's fucking bullshit. And then I'm watching the news, meteorologists are fucking saying, oh yeah, El Nino, we're gonna flood, fucking get the fuck out of town, buy sandbags. And I haven't seen shit. Not even a fucking cloud in the sky.
Well, it's the media. Every day they have to have some kind of a fear for us. There's something we have to, and it's going to be the last or the end of the earth or something or other. And it isn't going to be the end of the earth. It's something that's been going on for thousands of years.
When you see all these things happening, he says, look up, for then your redemption is nigh at hand. And the second thing is, if you realize what Southern California really is, it's pretty much a land of strangers. And it usually takes things like disasters to bring the people close together. And if nothing else, to humble them and make them realize there is a force bigger than them.
Every 2 to 7 years, we have a condition which we call El Nino. The trade winds begin to slacken off. It moves across the equator towards Peru. Those trade winds, when they do slacken off and change, pull with them the storms. This weather column moving up helps push the jet stream higher on the North American continent.
Soaking up this sudden crash course in El Nino, city leaders and common citizens of Orange County coastal communities such as Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, and Seal Beach began to prepare and think about what might be.
Well, Mark Thompson's watching this with interest and says, let's talk El Nino, shall we?
I'm always ready to talk El Nino.
Yes, you are.
Top of mind. It's not here yet. All right.
And may not be.
Well, I will show you, though. It's interesting because the things that we typically associate with El Nino are an active subtropical jet and an active westerly, which is what brings the storms in right across the Pacific. Neither one of those things very active now, so not to worry at this instant. I will show you what sort of somewhat interesting about.
I think it was 15 or 16 years ago, or 6 years ago, El Nino hit with great force and fury. And I have mixed thoughts on that. As a Christian, I believe that God allows natural elements and controls them, and why he allows them to be destructive is a puzzling one. It seems that both human tragedy come and also human triumph. And so it's a tough one.
We've had storms either from the ocean or from inland causing flooding and destruction, I would say once every 3 to 4 years. So for us, the concept of El Nino isn't much different from what we face every year getting ready for these storms.
If it comes here or it misses us, okay, we just need to realize that God is in control, okay, of the elements, okay.
To me, El Nino means potential problems that we need to get ready to deal with. When the bay level rises so high that we have to shut the tide valves so that the drains, the water that collects in the streets won't drain in the bay. And the reason we do that is because it rises so much, if we leave those tide valves open, the bay would come into the streets.
People don't think that revenge can come from nature because it's, usually thought of to be a passive entity, but it's not. It's conscious, and we're screwing with the world, and we're abusing it, and we're sucking the oil out of the mother. You can see the oil rigs right over there. And we're not conscious of what we're doing. We're not wise. We're insane. We have the most valuable herb on earth. The cannabis herb is massively criminalized, literally insane. People are insane.
El Nino has to come. They say it's going to be a big one. When's it going to get here?
The media attention that El Nino's had is unprecedented. I have never seen such a level of concern within a community over a particular issue.
Well, look what they've done with the big one. What is the big one?
Killer surf, people dying, floods happening.
And hurricanes posed the first threat. El Nino looked like he might make his first appearance by pulling a hurricane called Linda right up Southern California's coast. This initial fear, however, quickly vanished when nothing more than a piddly little drizzle arrived, the hurricane having turned out to sea, leaving El Nino wide open to harassment and ridicule.
September 25th, 1997. It is El Nino Day 1.
It's 1997, we're on 97.1, the biggest El Nino ever. I feel the world is coming to an end.
There's a 99-cent store. We do not have a location, but apparently the roof has sprung a leak, and there's an explosion of top ramen noodles. The noodles got wet, they're soaking up, they've blown out the cinder block wall. No injuries reported, but if you see ramen, there's nothing to see there, people. Just keep on driving.
One thing, though, this first bit of rain was enough to remind Southern Californians that their wet weather driving skills had done anything but improve over the long, hot summer.
Yeah, I was going down Beach Boulevard and I was going about 20 miles an hour. And the roads were just really slick, and I guess my tires were turning. And as I sped up about right here, just to go straight down the street, it went out of control and started going towards the Meridian. So I turned it this way and it came up here. So that's all.
She's very frustrated. This is her new car.
Well, thank God it's a Volvo, too.
Yes,
so even if
yes, thank God it's a Volvo, and thank God she's okay.
One thing the El Nino enhanced hurricanes did bring, however, was monster south swells, providing enthusiastic watergoers with gigantic waves up and down the Southern California coast.
The peak of the swell is going to be probably Wednesday or Tuesday. It's just going to be solid 15 foot. Hopefully there'll be some fun ones. It's just going to keep building and building, and probably by Wednesday or something, it's going to be huge, and that's going to be really fun.
We've had very high wave action at the wedge. One of the unique aspects of, we have people that want to come from everywhere because of the news media to see it. So when we have the storms, we have the rain, we have the flooding, we'll have a lot of people that will be here, and they can get in the way of all the service providers trying to make sure that people are taken care of.
The basic mistake is overestimating their ability when they come out here. That's the worst thing we see from some of the people who really don't know what they're doing. And we see them come out, and many times we'll see even the experienced people who come out here, but maybe they're a summer surfer. They're used to the waves coming in a certain manner.
One result of the hurricane surf was many surfboard casualties, including my own. Another was a sand berm erected by the city of Newport Beach, meant to protect oceanfront homes. A similar berm in Seal Beach had paid off, but some Newport residents felt that theirs was too much, too soon. A knee-jerk reaction by the city, an eyesore.
In October, when it's 95 and 100 degrees outside, you don't put up a berm that really, they have no proof it will protect us at all. Once the water does make it over this teeny little sand hill.
I think that the larger outcry came from people that are here for a short time, that are renters.
The rent price reflects the ocean view.
And now have lost their view. And they're not happy campers. Let's have one person ask a question at a time.
Hey, I want my view back.
You put it way out there in the middle, if you put it up by close by shore, about 4 foot high, we can see over it and stuff.
You know, we are not opposed to prophylaxis, but would you put a condom on tonight for sex that you're going to have New Year's Eve?
I think what you heard at the meeting was, you're not listening. Why didn't you listen to us? Why don't you talk to us? And even if you had, we don't trust you anyway.
It's not his business where we get flood insurance, if we get flood insurance. It's not his concern, and we're not going to ask him to replace furniture or carpets.
If we have a major storm, we can't get the berm up, we have damages, I know where they're going to be. I know who they're going to call. They're going to call me.
And as the long, hot Indian summer stretched on into late fall, Newport's berm was lowered. And all the preparation, the fear, the media attention given to this child, well, it began to look a little bit bogus. El Nino was everywhere except in the weather. Until it began to rain. Overnight, on December 6th, El Nino delivered his first brutal deluge with more intense rain than Orange County had ever experienced. Water quickly filled the streets, flooded homes, cars, and caused millions of dollars in damage. The child had made sure that everyone knew he was here. The beating continued into the morning before this first storm passed, and a lot of things got wet that weren't supposed to, even with the months of preparation.
I was looking outside to make sure that there was no flooding going on, and everything was fine. Every half hour, 40 minutes, I checked. I hadn't looked for a while, but then I heard some strange noises outside. I looked, and the next thing I saw is my car was drenched in water, and the whole street was that way. Any cars that were on the street were submerged in water. Basically, I believe that happened because the sewage just stopped pumping, and it all just accumulated within a half hour real quickly.
Especially hard hit was Laguna Beach, where the mud and water seemed to pour from everywhere. With both the hills and residents of Laguna still scarred by a major fire in 1993, this first El Nino storm was one which they could have done without.
First of all, I think the damage could have been worse, but I think especially people who live along the beaches spent a lot of time sandbagging. That's a lot of work to sandbag, but I think they heeded the warning. I think some of them were beginning to wonder, why are we doing this? But after what they lived through over the weekend, I think now many of them are saying, hey, yeah. I will say this, the various county agencies and city agencies have done all they could to get ready. They are not taking this lightly at all. And despite all of their preparation, you still saw what happened here in Laguna Beach because the system simply cannot hold the kind of rain that happened here. I mean, you're talking about a rain that it hasn't rained like this here since 1927.
It breaks my heart to see it. All the development and everything where does the water have to go? You know, nature has to have its way.
Even Laguna Beach City Hall, which had escaped the '93 fire, took a direct hit from El Nino.
If you come back down this way, you can see that this entire hallway was flooded, and the conference room in the back was also flooded. And if you take a look at the hill in the back, you can actually see a lot of the erosion that occurred.
I think we're going to see a lot of rain. I think we're going to see an enormous amount of rain. I don't think we're going to see the kind of rainfall in such a short period of time as we did this past weekend. But no, don't think that the rain is not going to still come, because it is going to come.
In the wake of this first powerful storm, El Nino provided some with a new muddy playground. His storms, however, stayed to the north, pounding away elsewhere, and allowed places like Laguna to regroup and dig in their heels. Continued large surf was evidence that the power out in the Pacific still loomed, and that if anything, the threat was more real now than ever before. But a festive spirit with all the activity prevailed, drawing people to the coast to witness the winter unfold. The pervasive excitement seemed to put a little bit of the child into everyone, and caused some to overlook the law altogether. But as February arrived, it became clear that the preparation had been all too necessary. From slight flooding to massive mudslides, for some, it would be a month long remembered.
Sorry.
That's the drainage pipe from the roof spraying out, I think.
On Saturday.
As storm after storm rolled in from the Pacific, El Nino began taking a heavier toll on the coast. Sea lions like this one, starving from lack of fish that were driven off by El Nino's warm waters and pummeled by the washing machine-like ocean, were only one sign of the devastation. In Laguna Beach, the steep hills became more and more saturated, and soon began to fail.
Right in front of the camera. It was at Tivoli Gardens tennis court, also in Laguna Beach. The slide was moving 2 to 3 feet per minute, and it caused extensive damage. Just look at these pictures.
There goes that fence. What an incredible view. Boom, and it's down.
The shifting ground pushed this entire chunk of mountain into the lap of the Laguna Beach Festival of Arts, virtually demolishing its restaurant and wedding chapel, Tivoli Terrace. This dramatic shift of earth, coupled with other slides on the coast and in the hills, made it clear that El Nino brought with him real change to the everyday, with real consequences, outside the sphere of any preparation. And Laguna Beach, for a time, began to fall apart.
That sounded like a freight train rolled over some homes in Laguna Beach. Some residents got out just in time, but they say they could hear it coming. It happened on Laguna Canyon Road near Castle Rock Road.
On February 23rd, a major storm began pelting the already soaked hills and overflowing channels of Laguna. With nowhere else to go, the water flooded out into the streets for the 97-98 winter's second time, covering the city's downtown with mud and debris. Though the downtown area was again badly hit, locked away behind the fallen hills deep in Laguna Canyon were more pressing horrors, some of which could never be cleaned up.
Somebody called me and said that they found a guy that had been missing. They found him dead out there where the slides were out around Castle Rock Road.
The lights went out. We were immediately engulfed in mud. I mean, it was really an avalanche. It wasn't a mud flow in the sense of being gradual. It was instantaneous. I mean, it came through the side of the house, broke down the exterior walls, the ceiling, the interior walls, and washed us all out 200 feet into the canyon. When it first hits you and you're inundated, your first thought is, I can't believe this is happening. And I can't believe I'm going to die like this, because it was awful.
Glenn Fluke was among those caught in Ann's living room when the mudslide hit. At 26 years old, Glenn had spent the evening rescuing neighbors from their mud-filled homes, even after his own had been destroyed. Having been taken in by Ann and her family, Glenn tragically had only a short time to recover before being swept to his death.
And Glenn was great. He was sitting there and he was chattering. His teeth were chattering. He was so cold, and he never complained. A few minutes later, we all fell through the floor, and Glenn kind of got pushed to the left a little bit and ended up buried in debris underneath the trailer. I just met him very briefly that night, but from what I understand, a very kind, compassionate pussycat of a large man. Loved life, very gentle, and very caring. And he went from car top to car top to car top, and then up on top of rooftops to help a mother and her 3 young children and hand them down in a chain to get them to safety.
Around the corner from where Glenn Fluke's life had been taken was still another death. Nick Flores was found curled up in bed, buried beneath 6 feet of mud.
They said he was asleep under the covers, never knew what hit him. They finally found him about 2 o'clock on the 3rd day. We were hoping he was in this front part of the house because that was just filled with debris and not mud, and if he was in there we could have gotten him out, but there was no way. The slide sort of sounds like when you fluff pillows really loudly. With the mud, it just sort of fluffs. It's this weird sound, almost like a silent loud.
The noise was just horrendous, the screams and the yells and the roar of the canyon still coming in the mud and the water. When I eventually landed pressed up against a building on Laguna Canyon Road, a tremendous amount of debris, of course, came over me, but when it was over, my head was still above the mud. Now, I did have a 2x4. It had been pressed very strongly against my throat, and at first I thought, okay, this is how I'm going to die. And I'm making peace with myself. I'm making peace with God. You know, I'm thinking about my kids. I'm thinking about the community. You know, my life did not flash before me. No bright lights. None of that. But when it was over, you know, I was really kind of preparing myself to die, and I was in a feeling of acceptance. And frankly, that lasted about a minute or two. And after that was over, it was like, forget acceptance, I'm out of here.
Recovering from her injuries, Anne, along with other wounded and displaced neighbors, was now faced with returning to the canyon to heal not only her body, but also her home.
Thank God we're a community that is not afraid to get our hands dirty. And it's funny because it seems to be mostly the women in the neighborhood. We get out there. We get out there and we muck it up. I mean, we'll fill sandbags and lug them around and, you know, go and dig through and mop and shovel mud and dirt or whatever it takes. We'll do it, you know. Damned if we won't. We'll do it.
We're used to taking care of ourselves. They're very strong, kind, compassionate people. And they really band together in a crisis.
But mingled with the canyon's self-reliant strength is also the faint suspicion that things were a bit more harsh than they needed to be.
There were fire companies stationed at El Toro Road. They did not come into the Big Bend area after the first slides.
The first time we had an emergency response, they were there within a matter of a couple minutes. There has been some criticism that they weren't able to get people out of some of the houses, and I think that's probably true. I think they were simply unable to get to some people, and we didn't have any equipment that could do that, but they were there, and they were the best trained people we had.
A man died that should not have died, you know, and that's really sad. He should not have been in my house at midnight after having gone through what he had gone through. I do think that there was enough equipment in Orange County to have evacuated these people. Now, Laguna couldn't do it. I mean, granted, they had every fire truck, and the people that came and showed up and worked, they put their lives at risk. They did everything they could. But something's not quite right with the end of the story. And there are lessons that must be learned.
And what about El Nino, the child who pushed all this rain and mud and destruction in from over the sea? Well, he made a lot more messes on his way toward leaving, and his presence remains evident even now. The $550 million damage done to the state of California is still rising, but hardly compares to the tragedy of the lives snuffed out. As prepared as people can possibly be, It seems they can never be prepared enough for what an indifferent part of nature might bring. But whether you're an Ann or a Jessica, a corporal or a surfer, or even running a city, fortunately most of us do a pretty good job looking out for one another, which is nice to know, especially if you or I happen to be the one standing face to face with the child the next time he decides to swing through town.